In the 1600s, Japan was ruled by the strict code of Bushido, where samurai were the epitome of honor and discipline. To be a samurai was to live a life of unwavering loyalty, self-control, and martial prowess. The samurai were warriors, yes, but also poets, philosophers, and men of deep honor. They swore allegiance to their lords, serving them without question, ready to lay down their lives at a moment's notice. Their sword was a symbol of their unbreakable commitment to Bushido, the way of the warrior. But what if a samurai defied this sacred code for something more? What if they chose personal freedom over loyalty? What if they turned their back on the very system they swore to protect and embraced a life of rebellion? This is a story of a samurai who did just that. A young, skilled warrior named Hattori Kiyoshi, who once pledged his life to his lord, only to raise his sword against his own people. This is a tale of blood, betrayal, and a journey to the high seas that would change his destiny forever. It begins with a simple question. What happens when a man of honor is pushed too far? When the rules that define him crumble, and the call for freedom is louder than the chains of loyalty? This is the story of Kiyoshi, the samurai who dared to rebel, and how his name became synonymous with freedom on the unpredictable high seas. In 1600 Japan, the samurai were the pinnacle of society. They were not only warriors, but also the embodiment of honor, discipline, and courage. The samurai code, known as Bushido, was more than just a set of rules. It was a way of life that governed every aspect of their existence. Bushido dictated how they lived, fought, and even how they died. At the core of this code was loyalty, specifically loyalty to one's lord or daimyo. To disobey or betray one's lord was considered the ultimate dishonor, and the consequences were severe. The samurai were taught to place the well-being of their lord above their own, sacrificing everything for the honor of their service. For a samurai, their honor was their life, and without it, they had nothing. During this time, Japan was under control of the Tokugawa Shogunate, a military government that ruled with an iron fist. After decades of civil war, the Tokugawa shoguns had successfully unified Japan, bringing an end to centuries of conflict. However, this peace came at a cost: strict social order and control. The samurai, once independent warriors who roamed freely, were now bound by the Tokugawa shogunate's rigid feudal system. They were no longer the noble warriors of old, but bureaucrats and enforcers of the state. In exchange for land and power, they swore allegiance to the Tokugawa, becoming pawns in the shogunate's quest for stability. Though they held high status in society, the samurai's lives were dictated by the needs of the shogunate, and they were often called upon to fight wars and enforce laws that served the greater political aims of the Tokugawa rulers. For the samurai, life was about more than just fighting. While they were skilled warriors, they were also scholars, poets, and strategists. Their training encompassed much more than just swordsmanship. Samurai were educated in the arts of calligraphy, philosophy, and literature. They were expected to be well-rounded individuals, possessing wisdom as well as martial prowess. A samurai's daily life was governed by routine and discipline. Early mornings were spent practicing swordsmanship, followed by study and reflection. Despite their elevated status in society, the samurai were not free men. They were required to serve their lords without question, to fight when called upon, and to follow orders without hesitation. The samurai were bound by a strict hierarchy and a loyalty to their lords that could not be broken. Their lives were not their own. The protagonist of our story is a young samurai named Hattori Kiyoshi. Born into a family of noble warriors, Kiyoshi was raised in the northern region of Japan, where his family had long served the samurai tradition. From a young age, Kiyoshi was taught the ways of the sword, learning to master katana under the watchful eye of his father, a respected samurai in the service of his lord. His father, a man of unwavering loyalty, had served his lord with distinction for many years, and was expected that Kiyoshi would follow in his footsteps. Kiyoshi's skill with the katana was exceptional, and he quickly became a rising star within his clan. His precision and strategic thinking set him apart, and it wasn't long before he was entrusted with important missions. As a young man, Kiyoshi had everything: a promising future, a respected name, and the potential to become a powerful warrior in his own right. As a young samurai, Kiyoshi was deeply loyal to his lord, Tokugawa Ieyasu, the powerful shogun who controlled Japan. He participated in numerous campaigns, earning praise for his bravery and tactical genius. His lord's ambition to consolidate power resonated with Kiyoshi, who saw his service as a noble cause. The samurai code of Bushido emphasized loyalty above all, and Kiyoshi embraced this principle wholeheartedly. He believed in the glory of his lord's vision for a unified Japan, and he swore to protect it at all costs. In battle, Kiyoshi was fierce and relentless, earning a reputation for his skill and courage. He truly believed that by serving his lord, he was serving Japan itself. For Kiyoshi, the samurai code was clear. Loyalty to his lord was the highest virtue, and there was no greater honor than to die for his cause. However, as Kiyoshi continued to serve in battle, he began to notice something troubling. The samurai, once revered as protectors of the people, had become tools of oppression. During one particular campaign in the south of Japan, Kiyoshi witnessed firsthand the brutal treatment of civilians. His lord's orders to destroy villages suspected of harboring rebels led to massacres of innocent men, women, and children. The justification for such bloodshed was simple. Order must be maintained at all costs. But to Kiyoshi, this was not honor. It was cruelty. As he stood over the bodies of those who had been slaughtered in the name of loyalty, his heart grew heavy. He began to question the very system he had been taught to uphold. Was this truly the way of honor? Was it right to follow a lord who would sacrifice innocent lives to maintain power? His conscience, once so clear, now felt murky. Kiyoshi's inner conflict began to grow, and he wondered if the path he had chosen was leading him to something darker than he had ever imagined. It was during a campaign in the southern provinces of Japan that Kiyoshi's disillusionment with the samurai code reached its peak. His lord, ever hungry for control, had ordered the destruction of a village suspected of harboring rebels. The soldiers, including Kiyoshi, were tasked with executing every man, woman, and child. Kiyoshi, who had once prided himself on being protector of the weak and innocent, now found himself standing in the middle of a massacre. The air was thick with smoke. The cries of slaughtered echoed across the fields. The village, once full of life, was now a smoldering ruin. Kiyoshi's hand trembled as he held a katana, unsure if he could carry out such an atrocity. This act of senseless violence shattered the foundation of Kiyoshi's faith in the samurai code. How could honor be found in the destruction of the defenseless? How could loyalty to one's lord justify such bloodshed? The samurai code, which had once seemed so pure, now felt tainted and hollow. One night, as Kiyoshi sat alone in the camp, consumed by the horrors of the day, he met a man who would change the course of his life forever. Goro was a former samurai, one who had abandoned his post and left the life of a warrior behind. Goro had grown weary of the endless bloodshed, the unrelenting loyalty to corrupt lords, and the oppressive system that bound him. Instead of following the way of the samurai, he had chosen a different path, a path that led him to the high seas as a pirate. Goro's eyes were sharp and his voice steady as he spoke to Kiyoshi. He told him of a life free from the constraints of Bushido, where one could live by their own rules, no longer shackled by the orders of a lord. He spoke of the freedom of the pirate life, where men and women were not bound by loyalty to a single master, but to each other. They lived not by the strict code of Bushido, but by the code of survival and freedom. Goro's words planted a seed deep in Kiyoshi's mind. For the first time, Kiyoshi considered the possibility of a life outside the rigid, suffocating system of the samurai. A life where he could choose his own path, where he could be the master of his own fate. The thought of freedom, of rejecting the system that had imprisoned him for so long, became irresistible. The samurai code had promised honor, but it also demanded sacrifice, often at the cost of innocent lives. Kiyoshi began to wonder, what is the true meaning of honor? Was it simply obedience to a lord, or was it something greater, something more personal, something that allowed a man to live authentically, free from the tyranny of others? Goro's words and the idea of freedom they represented haunted Kiyoshi day and night. After weeks of inner turmoil, Kiyoshi made a fateful decision. He could no longer live in a world where loyalty to a corrupt system was valued more than individual honor and the protection of the innocent. One moonless night, while his comrades slept in their tents, Kiyoshi gathered his belongings and silently slipped away from the samurai camp. The weight of his decision pressed heavily on him. For by leaving, Kiyoshi was condemning himself to a life of exile. He would be branded a traitor and hunted by his own people. Yet, in the quiet of the night, Kiyoshi knew that he could no longer be a part of a system that had led him down a path of destruction. He journeyed to the coastal town of Hakodate, where he found Goro and his band of pirates waiting. They offered him a chance to escape the life he had known and join them on the high seas. It was a bold move, a dangerous move, but for Kiyoshi, the promise of freedom was too tempting to resist. Life as a pirate was harsh, filled with danger at every turn. The sea was unpredictable, and the pirates lived by their wits and strength. They plundered merchant ships, took what they wanted, and lived without the constraints of the samurai code or any code of honor but their own. Yet, for Kiyoshi, it was a world where he could finally breathe. He was no longer a tool of his lord's ambitions, no longer a pawn in the game of feudal politics. Among the pirates, he found something he had never experienced before: freedom. A freedom that came with a price, but a price Kiyoshi was willing to pay. In this chaotic, lawless world, he was his own master, bound only by the principles he chose to live by. It was far from perfect, but it was real, and it was his. Kiyoshi quickly adapted to life on the high seas. His skill with a sword, honed over years of samurai training, made him an invaluable asset to the pirate crew. He became a fierce and respected fighter, leading raids on merchant ships with the same precision and strategy that had earned him fame as a samurai. But as he spent more time with the pirates, Kiyoshi realized that their world, though free, was also filled with its own set of rules. There was no Bushido code, no formal set of principles to follow. Yet, Kiyoshi developed his own sense of honor. He refused to harm innocent civilians, and he protected those who were vulnerable, especially women and children. While he no longer lived by the samurai code, Kiyoshi still clung to the belief that honor and integrity were important. In his own way, he continued to live as a warrior, though now he was a pirate, not a samurai. His honor had evolved, but it was no less real. As Kiyoshi's reputation grew on the high seas, so did his influence within the pirate crew. What began as a small, disorganized band of outcasts transformed under his leadership into a well-oiled machine. He was not just a swordsman. Kiyoshi was a strategist, and his military training gave him the edge in battle. His tactical brilliance became legendary, and under his command, the crew began to raid ships with greater efficiency than ever before. They targeted merchant vessels along the coast of China and Southeast Asia, seizing valuable cargo and resources. Yet, it wasn't just Kiyoshi's ability to plunder that set him apart. It was his leadership style. Unlike many pirate captains who ruled through fear and intimidation, Kiyoshi led with discipline, earning the respect of his crew through fairness and honor. He believed that true leadership came from mutual respect, not blind obedience. His crew admired his courage and the way he held his ground in battle, but more than that, they respected his integrity. Kiyoshi's pirate ship quickly became one of the most feared vessels in the region, known not just for its might, but for its orderliness and the sense of brotherhood that Kiyoshi instilled in his crew. They weren't just pirates. They were a family bound by loyalty and respect. With his growing influence, Kiyoshi began to establish a new order aboard his ship, a new code, distinct from the traditional pirate code. Where other pirate crews often ran rampant with greed, violence, and chaos, Kiyoshi insisted on a set of rules that valued loyalty to one another and fairness. His code was built on respect for life, the pursuit of freedom, and the protection of those who could not defend themselves. He made it clear to every member of the crew that unnecessary violence was forbidden, and no pirate under his command would harm the innocent or pillage from helpless villages. Under Kiyoshi's leadership, the crew began to operate with a level of discipline they had never known before. They carefully selected their targets, always avoiding innocent bystanders and merchants who were simply passing through. Kiyoshi encouraged his men to think of themselves as more than just thieves. They were men and women who, though living outside the law, had a responsibility to uphold a sense of morality in their actions. No longer were they reckless wanderers of the seas. They were pirates with honor, guided by a code of their own making. But this code came with a cost. Kiyoshi's rules, though based on respect, were in stark contrast to the lawlessness of the seas that many pirates had grown accustomed to. Not all pirates were happy with Kiyoshi's approach. Among the crew, some of the older pirates, who had been raiding the seas for years, chafed under Kiyoshi's structured leadership. They had grown accustomed to the chaos and unpredictability of pirate life, where survival often came down to individual power and the ability to take what you wanted. They felt Kiyoshi's rules were too restrictive, that his emphasis on fairness and discipline undermined the very essence of piracy. These pirates, who had once roamed freely and without consequence, began to see Kiyoshi's leadership as a threat to their way of life. Whispers of discontent spread throughout the crew. Some openly questioned Kiyoshi's authority, calling him soft for forbidding unnecessary violence and encouraging acts of mercy. Others began to plot against him, worried that his vision of a new breed of pirate would diminish their power and spoils. The tension between the traditional pirates and Kiyoshi's new order grew. While the crew continued to thrive under Kiyoshi's leadership, a sense of unease simmered beneath the surface. Some pirates began to see their captain not as a leader, but as a tyrant, someone who was taking away the very freedom that piracy had always promised. As Kiyoshi's fame as a pirate spread across the seas, so too did the whispers of his past. The Tokugawa Shogunate, ever vigilant against rebellion, began to hear rumors of former samurai who had abandoned his sworn duty and taken to the high seas as a pirate. The shogunate, which had worked tirelessly to bring stability to Japan, saw Kiyoshi's actions as a direct challenge to their authority. A rogue samurai, now leading a pirate crew, such a figure could not be allowed to thrive without consequence. They saw Kiyoshi not just as a fugitive, but as a symbol of defiance, someone whose very existence threatened the fragile peace they had worked so hard to secure. The Tokugawa Shogunate, fearing the potential rise of other rebellious samurai, made a bold decision. They sent a fleet of samurai ships, fully armed and ready for battle, to bring Kiyoshi to justice. The message was clear. No one, not even a former samurai, could escape the law of the shogunate. Kiyoshi, the man who had once fought under their banner, was now their greatest enemy. Kiyoshi, upon hearing of the approaching fleet, knew that the time for running was over. There was no turning back now. His past, his loyalty, and his former life as a samurai had all led him to this moment. The battle would be fierce, but Kiyoshi was no stranger to war. His training as a samurai had prepared him for such a day. As the samurai fleet appeared on the horizon, Kiyoshi gathered his crew, and they prepared for what would be the ultimate test of their survival. The battle raged across the open sea. Waves crashing as swords clashed and cannon fire tore through the air. Kiyoshi led his men with the same precision and strategy that had earned him respect in battle as a samurai. His mind was sharp, and his instincts, honed over years of warfare, guided him through the chaos. Yet despite his leadership, the samurai fleet was relentless. They fought with the discipline and honor that Kiyoshi had once embodied. Their resolve was unyielding as his own. It was a battle between two worlds, Kiyoshi's rebellion against the Tokugawa shogunate's iron rule, and the samurai's unwavering loyalty to their lord. The samurai fought to restore order, to prove that the code of Bushido could never be abandoned. Kiyoshi and his crew, however, fought for freedom, a freedom from oppression, from tyranny, from a life bound by duty and loyalty to a corrupt system. It was loyalty to the Lord against loyalty to one's own principles, and the clash was more than just a physical one. It was a clash of ideologies. As the battle wore on, Kiyoshi's crew began to show signs of strain. The pirate life was one of danger and uncertainty, but it had also been a life of freedom. Now, as they faced the might of the Tokugawa fleet, Kiyoshi's dream of a pirate crew united by mutual respect seemed to be unraveling. Some of the crew, fearful for their lives and questioning whether Kiyoshi's vision of honor was worth dying for, began to waver in their loyalty. In the heat of the battle, as Kiyoshi fought alongside his men, something unexpected happened. He was betrayed. A group of pirates, once loyal to him, turned against their captain. They had grown afraid, fearing the consequences of defying the might of the shogunate. To them, Kiyoshi was no longer the leader who promised freedom. He was a liability, a threat to their own survival. They saw the samurai as inevitable victors, and chose to abandon Kiyoshi's cause. In a split second, the man who had once lived by the Bushido code found himself surrounded by those he had trusted. The same pirates who had once fought beside him now pointed their weapons at him. Kiyoshi, once a samurai who swore unwavering loyalty to his lord, now found himself betrayed by those he had sworn to protect. The very idea of loyalty that had defined his life, both as a samurai and a pirate, had now been turned against him. The battle that had begun as a fight for freedom was now one for survival, a fight not just against the samurai fleet, but against the very men who had once followed him. After the battle, Kiyoshi vanished from history. The sea swallowed his fate, and no one truly knew what became of the once proud samurai turned pirate. Some say he returned to Japan, living out his days in exile, haunted by the choices he had made and the men he had left behind. Others claim he died in the final battle, his sword still in hand, a pirate until the end. His name became a whispered legend among both pirates and samurai, a story of rebellion, honor, and the cost of freedom. The man who had once sworn loyalty to his lord had forged a new path, but at what cost? In abandoning the system he was born to serve, he lost everything he once held dear. Yet, Kiyoshi had created his own destiny, one free from the constraints of a rigid code. And in doing so, he became something more than a samurai. He became a symbol of defiance, a reminder that freedom often requires the ultimate sacrifice. Though Kiyoshi's name faded into obscurity, his story lived on, a symbol of rebellion and the spirit of independence. He was a man who refused to live by the rules imposed upon him, who challenged the very system that had been designed to control him. In doing so, he created a new kind of warrior, one who lived by their own code. Kiyoshi's legacy is not one of fame or glory, but a defiance against oppression, of choosing personal freedom over blind loyalty. His story echoes across time, reminding us all that sometimes, to live freely, we must first break the chains that bind us. Kiyoshi's journey is a powerful reminder that freedom often comes at a steep price. It forces us to ask, would you remain loyal to your lord, or would you seek your own path to freedom, regardless of the consequences? What would you choose? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed Kiyoshi's story, share this video with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories from history's most daring figures. Together, let's explore the hidden legends that shape the world.